Greetings, greetings, family. We are live. Let's just make sure that we get this recorded. Welcome. Welcome, family. It's Wednesday, Wisdom Wednesday, Ujamaa Day. Thank you so much for joining us for another Sister Shanice show. It's going to be a fantastic, bombastic event, as it always is. We are just, floating at the moment off of the back of some wonderful Pan-African, African Liberation Day events. So jumbo to everybody that's joining us. Habari Gani, Yenge Lumbu Kiambote, Nangadef. Welcome, family. As you come through the door, please drop us a note in the chat. Let us know that you're in the house. We are so grateful that you're joining us. We are a powerful people. We are the most ingenious, the most creative people that there is on the face of the earth. We are greater than you can even begin to imagine. Most of us have lost the memory of our greatness, and there's so much that we need to do to get us back to the place where we recognize, who we really are as a people. And so there's a great job of work to be done, and each and every one of us needs to be doing the best that we can 24/7 to work towards liberating our minds, liberating our people, and liberating each and every one of us that needs to be walking around with a decolonized mind during these times. So welcome. Also, I just want to big up Yushi as well. Oh my days, our brother Yush has done me a track. It's absolutely fantastic. I just need to put a little video or something to it so that I can play it for you. But Yushi, thank you so much for that. Absolutely fantastic. It was a wonderful surprise. I wasn't expecting it. And so when I went into my emails and saw this track from Yushi, I've just got to thank you so much. So let me go over to our message for today, family. It's going to be an absolutely fantastic conversation with some great young people who are at the forefront in their communities in terms of promoting the Pan-African message. I'm so excited about today and looking forward to getting straight into the show as well. So let me just grab for you the title of our show today. In fact, let me ask our brother Kwame Gonza to just introduce himself to you. Hold on, let me spotlight him for you. And I can see that we've been joined by Pigbin as well, one of our other guest speakers for today. Come on, computer, you've been very slow today. I need you to spotlight Kwame and Pigbin for us. And here we go. Right, let's add spotlight. There we go. Okay, welcome, Kwame. How are you? There's a little delay on the line, but we're going to work with it.
I'm doing great, Sister Shanice. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm really so glad that I'm on your show. This wonderful media house. I'm on your where we always sharing our wonderful message, where our people are taught, where information is brought to our people, and they are able to understand who they are. You bring wonderful guests, you bring wonderful teachers. So we are really glad that this platform, is around and is available, and that you found this platform, you created this platform. So we want to encourage all those people doing this because this platform is very important. Before I introduce myself, I will introduce myself for those who don't know me. But you have to subscribe to the channel. If you are out there, you have not subscribed to the channel, like the channel. You cannot watch before liking. So like whatever, you are seeing. There's plenty of programs that have been published on this channel. You can only do the Pan-African work of supporting if you go out and support the people who are on the forefront. And one of the people who are on the forefront is the sister Shanice. So you need to go out there and do that. Now, my name is Kwame Gonza, and I'm currently located in the western part of Africa, our motherland. I was born in the eastern part of the continent, in a place called Uganda, because I consider Africa as a country, as a state, as a civilizational state. So I was born in a place called Uganda, but I'm currently living in the western part of the continent. I'm a railway engineer. I'm also a Pan-Africanist who has been practicing Pan-Africanism for the last 10 years. I'm currently the operations director of Connect Africa, which was founded by my dear sister, Malet Baicha. So this is where I'm practicing my Pan-Africanism from. I've appeared on SABC News of South Africa. I've appeared on, Oromia Broadcasting Network of Ethiopia. I've appeared on Channel TV, Nigeria, a lot of TVs where I've appeared in Ghana. I've appeared on, Africa TV, Africa. So all this just to push the struggle forward. And that struggle is for us to be able to unify Africa. So once again, I'm glad to be on the Sister Shanice show. And thank you for having me, Sister Shanice.
We thank you so much for joining us, my brother. It's an absolute pleasure and honor. I'd also like to add to the spotlight our other special guest for today, our brother Pigbin, who's joining us. Welcome, brother Comrade Pigbin. How are you?
Thank you, Sister Shanice. I'm good.
It's a privilege and an honor to have you join us today, my brother. Family, you may not be aware of this brother because he's new to this platform, but although he's new to this platform, he has been doing some great works in his community. He's a politician, revolutionary Pan-Africanist, advocate for young leadership. He's accountable and transport government member, party leader of the Accountability and Transparency Party, presidential aspirant to Kenya 2022, convener of Kenya Youth Assembly, and so much more. Let me allow our young brother to introduce himself to the Sister Shanice Show family.
Once again, thank you, Sister Shanice. It's a pleasure to be here. Indeed, I'm new to the show or this program as a guest, but I'm aware of this show for so long. And I would like also people to actually follow the show, because I've been seeing that guests being invited here, what information being shared here, and I think is the home for authentic Pan-African information. So I'd like to ask all people watching to keep on toes, subscribe so that they can get notification of more great shows like this one. Yes, indeed. I'm a Kenyan, born in Kenya, but I'm an African first. Kenya. I'm a Kenyan because white men said I'm in Kenya, but they found me in Africa. So I'm glad to be here. As you said, yes, I've dealt with so many things politically and so many other things. I'm part of the Consciousism or Nkrumahism study group, where we are also trying to find a philosophy and ideology to lead Africa. Sankara said a leader without an ideology is like a potential criminal. A soldier without an ideology is a potential criminal. So as even we try to liberate the continent, I think there need to be armed with ideology and a philosophy. And this is what we are doing. I've been in all political angle as a young person, and I'm trying to show that we can do it, the young people, we can do it. So we need just to come out. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Our young people absolutely can do it. And we're delighted and honored, my young brother, to have you join us today, because we really want to hear the perspective from, our future because, you know, a future without young people with the right ideology is, you know, disastrous potentially for us as a people. So behind the scenes here, I'm just letting the family know that we are live. So I was just posting behind the scenes, and let me go over to YouTube and just take a check and see who we've got in the audience today. And let's bring in some of the comments from our wonderful, wonderful audience. As I can see the families in the house and they're messaging us. We want to rise up. Zachary in the house, first frequency from Chicago, Illinois. Black First, welcome, welcome. This is a global channel. We've got family members from all around the world. Thank you so much. We've got the Jamaican Junko in the house. My love said that name, you see. Welcome, Jamaican Junko. Good to have you in the house. We've got Roots Reggae in the house as well. Afri Jamo from Ghana is in the house. Mandele is in the house. Yenge, Lumbu Kiambote, my brother Mandele. We've got Kwame in the house. Kimani, Obeth, the family's coming through the door. Big up yourselves, each and every one of you, sending more love, more strength, and more voodoo out to each and every one of you. Please give us a like as you come through the door. Brother Gebra in the house. Oh, thank you so much, each and every one of you. Betty's in the house. Oh, Shez is in the house. Thank you all so much. Absolutely phenomenal. So I will be keeping a check and an eye on the chat as well. And as you post your questions, if you have any information that you want to share with us and you'd like me to read it out, just post it in the chat, and I'll definitely be doing the best I can to make sure that I bring the information into the show today. More love, more strength to each and every one of you that has joined us for our show today. Wow. It's going to be fire, because, hopefully everybody was part of at least one African Liberation Day event. And hopefully, you all feel fired up as a result of that African Liberation Day event that you attended. I was actually involved in an African Liberation Day event that was organized by PACM. What a phenomenal event it was, with our brother, Dr. Rev Shock. We had our brother, Professor James Small. We had our sister, Asha, and so I want to thank those who joined us live. If you missed the show, you can actually still catch the show live on my YouTube channel. Well, not live now, but the live is there on the channel. Also, just to remind you, family, that I do have a book out there, and if you don't already have the book, please do go to Amazon, where you'll be able to get hold of a copy. It's called A Black King of Anglo-Saxon England. Yes, we had black kings even during Anglo-Saxon times. We've had black monarchies ruling Europe for thousands of years. A lot of our history has been hidden. I'm uncovering a huge amount of our history in that book. So if you haven't already got it, make sure you do get a copy for your bookshelf, and so that you can share the knowledge with our next generation. Absolutely phenomenal read, I've been told, and thank you in advance to everybody who's got that book. So, as Pan-Africanists, our primary objective is to ensure that we as a people liberate ourselves, that we are liberated mentally. We're already physically liberated because our ancestors have done the work, but we now have got to do the work towards our total liberation as a people. And we're going to be having that conversation today, that really important conversation about how we actually liberate the minds, decolonize the minds of our people, what the important next steps are towards our total liberation as a people. So I can't see the flyer in front of me just now. Let me go over to my guest so that he can tell me, remind me of the exact title for today's show. Brother Kwame, have you got the title there in front of you? Please remind
Yes,
me of the
Sister
exact...
Shanice. Yes,
Go
Sister
ahead.
Shanice. Yes, the title for today is The Next Phase of Liberation. the next phase of the liberation of our continent. That is the title which we want to tackle today. We want to understand what is it that we have to do in our era, or what President Xi Jinping of China normally calls the new era. Whenever he's talking about relationships in the new era. So we are in an era where we are seeing signs across the globe. And those signs, in most cases, have been or are similar to what signs existed during the struggle when our ancestors in Haiti, put up a very strong, struggle, a very huge struggle, and they were able to liberate the Black man all across the globe, hence the stoppage of slavery. I'm talking about 1799 up to 1804. So there is certain events which existed during 1799 when our ancestors started struggling, because they saw certain weaknesses, they saw certain gaps, they saw a vacuum and say, we have to use this chance and struggle. And it also applies to the year 1945. In 1945, our ancestors also saw certain things which were happening. They saw things like, for example, the Second World War. After the end of Second World War, Europe was weak, and certain things were going on during that period. So they saw a chance there that since these people have become weak, then we have to take a chance and then start struggling and start agitating. And of course, they agitated for almost 12 years, when you come to the Gold Coast, for example. In other parts of Africa, of course, it took longer, but in the Gold Coast, it agitated for almost around 12 years. When you go back to Haiti, they agitated for almost 13 years if you calculate from 1791 up to 1804, when Haiti got the independence and slavery was consequently stopped. So when we look at the signs of that time, and you look at today what is happening across the globe, the things in Afghanistan, South China Sea, the struggle, the quarrels within the colonialists and stuff like that. Just recently, they had a summit, in Japan, which is called the G7 summit, but it's because they have some friction within them. So these are all signs for us as Africans to pick up and also start agitating. And those agitations, of course, we are supposed to, study. We are supposed to talk to each other so that we can find those solutions. And I'm glad that my brother is here. My brother Kabbalah, the founder of the Africa Continental Unity Party. So these are signs for us to, to start talking to each other as people who are on the forefront and struggling for the liberation of our people all across the globe. So this is what the next phase of liberation, I think, should mean for us, or what it means for us as African people.
Thank you so much, Brother Kwame Gonza. The next phase of our struggle, the next phase of African liberation. And absolutely agree with you, my brother, that it's all about timing. If we look back in history, we can see that we made our greatest advances as a people during certain strategic times. And this is definitely a time that we need to be taking advantage of, making some great strides and great moves. Welcome, Brother Kabbalah. Great that you were able to join us this evening. Brother Kabbalah is another one of our guests this evening. Let's just check your microphone. How are you?
Peace and love, Queen. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, fantastic. Hearing you loud and clear. Welcome, Brother Kabbalah. Brother Kabbalah is not a stranger to our platform. He has been on our shows before. And as our brother Kwame Gonza has said, he is the founder of the ACUP. And he's originally from the DRC, Democratic of Congo, and he's also author of 2 books. The first one is Exploration of the Mind Without Compensation, and the second one is What Time Is It? The question to the African millennials. So we welcome you. He's also a community developer, a member of the African Continental Union Party, as we said. We welcome you. We welcome you as we have our conversation today about the next important steps in our liberation struggle. Let's go straight over to you, my brother, with a response, an opening response to that question.
That should be me, I guess.
Yes, Brother Kabbalah. Did that not sound like your introduction? I really
Perfect, sorry. No, you're right, Queen. No, it's fine. Thank you very much for the opportunity again to be on your show today. It's always a pleasure to be on your show. And we very much appreciate the work that you put in for the liberation of Africa and the emancipation of Africa. So as you said, my name is Kabbalah. Originally, I am from the colonial enclosure that we call the Democratic Republic of the Congo. I am a member of the African Continental Unity Party. I am a Pan-Africanist. I am author of 2 books. I'm a community developer, strategist. So today we, as the topic itself, stands, it's a very important topic where we deal with the next phase of African struggle for liberation. I just think, as a brother who preceded me was saying, the best way to understand what will be the next phase for African liberation, or the next phase for the struggle for African liberation, is to understand what was the previous phase of the struggle for our liberation. And the best way to understand the previous phase of African struggle for liberation is to check in the history of Africa to see what happened. And for me, I think that the previous phase for African struggle was in what I call an elite phase of African struggle. The reason is that in the world order established by the white man, the black person has that place of being an eternal servant of white capitalism. And that can be well seen during the colonialism. Throughout the colonial period, Africans were not allowed a better education. It was only at the end or towards the end of the colonial period, mostly around 1955, where Africans were now allowed to go to certain advanced education. And the reason for that was the Europeans were now preparing a certain class of Africans who were to take over the management of Africa on behalf of Europeans themselves. In other words, they were preparing some puppets who were going to be in charge of Africa in order to further the exploitation of Africa for the benefits of European countries. However, every situation has always 2 sides of it. Whatever that you plan, there's always an unseen side of what you are planning, and what you are obviously anticipating to observe or to obtain as a result of what you are planning. So the foreseen side of what European planned in preparing this class of leaders in Africa who were going to manage Africa on behalf of European imperialism, the foreseen side of it was the class of leaders that took charge of Africa starting from the independence period. And unforeseen side of it was also a type of leaders among those African who were educated according to European educational system, those who break away from the agenda of being the puppets of European people to be now the true revolutionaries who were now fighting for the true liberation of Africa. People such as Patrice Lumumba, Kwame Nkrumah are part of those who broke away from the agenda, the main agenda of getting a class of Africans who were going to manage Africa on behalf of Europeans. Those are the leaders who wanted to see Africa truly emancipated, to see African people really benefiting from the resources of Africa. Unfortunately, we know the result. They were taken out quickly. Kwame Nkrumah was overthrown, Lumumba was killed, Sankara was killed, Sekou Touré was isolated, and all of them, all those leaders who actually derived from the agenda, from the main agenda of neocolonialism to help Africans benefit from the resources of Africa, were killed. And what we had to face in Africa was a situation where most of leaders who remained in power for a long period were those who were working according to the agenda of European, of having Africans who were just there as a puppet or as managers of the enterprise of, built by Europeans to benefit the European countries. And that has been the previous phase of African struggle. It was eventually undermined, and we have been dealing with the people who have been in power for 40 years, 30 years, or I don't know how many years, because they are working properly as the managers of the European capitalism by exploiting the resources of Africa and building, obviously, stocking those resources in Europe. And this has been a devastating situation for us as the masses of African people, because we have not seen the hope that we have had in Africa, or in our hearts, to see Africa which benefiting the children of our Africa. We haven't seen that us as the masses of African people. It's only the elites who is in power that has been benefiting from the resources of Africa in such a way that they are able to send their kids or to go themselves overseas to treat themselves whenever they are sick, while the masses of African people cannot afford a proper healthcare, and the healthcare system in Africa is collapsing. When it comes to education, the elites are able to send their kids overseas to study in a better education or better universities, while the masses of African people cannot afford a better education. So in a nutshell, we have not gotten something out of this previous struggle of African, or this previous phase of the struggle for African liberation, simply because it was an elite struggle, not really the masses struggle for the liberation. Is the elite that was prepared by the European, that struggle, and mainly that struggle was for them to replace Europeans in the driving seat, or should I say, in that position of leadership, so that they can dominate Africans just as Europeans were dominating them, right? It was all about you being dominated by European imperialism, then you want to occupy the place of the one who dominates you, not really to occupy that place in order to serve your people, but only to benefit from the privilege of being in charge. So that's what we have been seeing right now in Africa. That's the situation. That is a result of the previous phase of African struggle for liberation. So now it is important, as we're talking about the next phase. And this phase, according to me, I look at it as the masses phase. So this phase for African revolution, or African liberation, should I say, it shouldn't be again the elite phase. It shouldn't be again a phase of bourgeoisie. It should be the masses involved in the designing of the Africa that we all want, Africa that will be able to benefit all African people. That is the next phase of African liberation. And the reason is very simple. We are no longer at that age of expecting the salvation of Africa from the elites, because number one reason, we have seen already the results when we leave the responsibility of our destiny in the hands of the elites, which is by itself controlled by the European powers. We see that our lives are getting from bad to worse, as we are seeing around Africa today. Africa is rich. Our resources are being taken out of Africa every single day to build the future of European kids, while the African kids don't have hope even after school, even after they've been told that for your life to become better, you need to educate yourself, you need to go to university, you need to get master's degree. We don't have a hope of getting a better job after all those things, simply because the future that Africa represents is rather the future of European kids, rather than the future of African kids, simply because the people who are in charge of Africa today are running the affairs of Africa on behalf of European countries. So this has been the consequence of the elites being in charge while we are hoping, on them. So now we need to realize that it is now upon each and every African person, male and female, of all age, to get that consciousness of obviously taking matters in our hands and begin to do for ourselves what we have been expecting other people to do for us. And as I said, that's the first reason why we cannot leave the responsibility or our destiny in the hands of the elites. And number two reason why we cannot expect the African elites to be the ones who have to bring solution to us is this. You see, where we're coming from, the world was led or governed by religious leaders who were at the same time political leaders. You can refer to the pharaohs who had religious power as well as political power. You can also refer to the popes who had in the past religious power, also the political power to run the affairs of the state. Now, time is always the enemy of everything. If you don't want to change, time will force change upon your life. As time evolved, religious leaders saw that their position was obviously reversed. Time brought some people we can call today pure politicians to become now the masters of our nations, to replace religious who were in the charge of nation management. Now politicians became now in charge of the nations and became now the ones who were managing all the 9 areas of people's activities. I can talk about economy, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. All these 9 areas of people's activities were under the control of pure politicians. Now, when you look at the world today, you will see that the same thing that happened in the past to religious leaders is about to happen today to our politicians, in such a way that politicians are no longer really the ones who are in charge of affairs of our nations today. They are the money managers of the world, the bankers, the ones we can call the transnational capitalist class, who are now in charge of our states, to the point where now they can buy politicians, give politicians an agenda, fund those politicians, and then make sure that the politicians execute the agenda, which they have, at the expenses of us, the masses of African people. You have what is called in the world today the lobbyist groups. What is the lobbyist group? Is a group of people who have a lot of money, who are able to come and then select politicians and then give those politicians the mission and then promote those politicians through their own channel of propaganda. And we are going to elect those politicians who have been already pre-selected and given a mandate. And we don't know the mandates for which they've been selected, and we just elect him. And that's the reason why the first thing the first policy that these people obviously enact in our countries raise some kind of protest or rebellions in the people. You see that they're coming up with a policy today, and tomorrow the masses of young people are on the street protesting against those policies. Why? Because those policies are not coming from the desire of the masses. They are rather coming from the ones who funded the politicians. So in a nutshell, what I'm trying to say is that our politicians today are already in the pockets of the money managers of the world. So we cannot expect much from them to bring about the solutions that we want in Africa. So it is time now that us, the masses in Africa, us, the ordinary people of Africa, should stand up and then build institutions of power in order to determine or dictate what is the future of Africa, or what is the phase of the next struggle. What is the next phase of the struggle for African liberation and emancipation will be, and make sure that that struggle will be implemented by all of us as the African masses, and then we'll make sure that the results that we want after that will happen. Because if we believe that by some magic there will be a power in heaven that will come to change Africa, I just have to remind all Africans that the bird in the sky will seize that power before we even capture the power. Or even if we think that the power will come from the water, I will say that the fish in the water will seize that power before us. And if we think that there's some kind of supernatural leader who will come to serve Africa, to change the situation of Africa, we'll have to go through the same situation that we have been going through for the past 60 years, that we have been enthusiastically electing leaders, hoping that they will be the ones who can change the situation of Africa. And at the end of the day, we see that they really didn't work for us. They are working for the international capitalist system at the expense of us as ordinary African people. So the fool is the one who does the same thing every time and expect different results. This is to say that, yes, you can go and continue to vote for whoever leader that you think is potentially good to bring about change, but we cannot hope that these leaders will bring about the change that we hope in Africa, that we want to see in Africa. And let me say this one. Every leader who comes in power in Africa today, once he's in power, he comes to realize something, which is, if it does not work to satisfy the expectation of the United States of America, of NATO countries and other European countries, is going to be taken out quickly. So therefore, every leader who comes into power must make sure that he meets the expectation of these imperialist countries. Otherwise, he's going to be killed. And we, as the masses who have elected those leaders, we get disappointed at the end of the game because we don't meet our expectation. The only way to change this narrative is to build our own institutions of power as the masses of Africa. We need to organize ourselves and build some structures of power that will threaten the leaders, the same way that the leaders feel threatened by the United States, so that they must do what the United States wants. Otherwise, they can face some consequences. The leaders must feel the same thing about African people. What is happening in Africa today is because they take us as stupid, as, you know, they take us for granted because they can always come after 5 years to manipulate us to get our votes. And when they go into power, they implement the agenda of white men, you know, instead of the agenda that we have elected them for. So we need to come up with the structures of power that will put politicians in a very awkward position, so that whenever they don't meet our expectation, they can face the very same danger which they can face when they don't meet the expectation of European countries. And this is how we are going to implement the next phase of African struggle for liberation. And what we need to do as masses of African is to organize ourselves. The Honorable Marcus Garvey, the one we call the provisional president of the United States of Africa, he said that the most important danger to the African family is the danger of disorganization. Stokely Carmichael Kwame Ture said, if you organize a little, you get little things done for you. If you organize sometimes, you get things done sometimes for you. But if you don't organize at all, you get nothing done at all. Organization is the key for the next phase of African struggle for liberation and emancipation. And this organization must result into the building of institutions of power. The world today is dominated by institutions. We're talking about the World Bank, IMF, World Trade Organization. All these are institutions that Europeans have built for themselves. We are our own institutions as African people that we can rely on. Look in our markets, look in our areas, our communities. Who dominates our markets? Foreigners, Indians, Chinese, Arabs are the ones who feed us, are the ones who provide, you know, whatever that we need. You know, all the supermarkets are controlled by these people. How can we talk about independence of freedom if we are unable even to feed ourselves? Even things that we used to produce in Africa today are being now supplied by foreigners, while we have the land, while we have the capacity to produce these things. So we need to understand that it's only organization which can help us to implement successfully the agenda or the next phase of the African struggle for liberation. And this struggle cannot be the elite struggle. It's no longer the bourgeois struggle. It is the masses struggle. And for it to be implemented correctly, we need to organize. So you tell me about Pan-Africanism. Show me which organization are you part of? And what are your contributions to that organization in order to achieve our goals for liberation and emancipation? Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much, Brother Kabbalah. You know, a very deeply thought-provoking and insightful presentation there. Agree with everything that you were saying. Organization, organize, 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 absolutely critical. So every single one of us needs to belong to a Pan-African organization. Every one of us. Every man, woman, and child needs to belong to a Pan-African organization. Within that organization, you develop that kinship relationship, build up that family relationship within the organization. And as our brother Kabbalah was alluding to, then we come together and we do business together. We take over those shops, we take over those supermarkets. We become the providers within our community. We have to start circulating the funds and the money and the finances among ourselves and between ourselves to elevate ourselves economically. Because, you know, as Brother Kabbalah was saying, if we don't take over the supplies of our food, if we're not in control of our agriculture, if we're not, you know, the ones that are doing the farming, then we're leaving ourselves in a very vulnerable situation, because once, you know, others are feeding us, it's already been reminded, we've already been reminded in the chat, that as Africans, we have no friends. We have no friends. It's just a matter of time before, you know, we're poisoned as a people. We're already being slowly poisoned. Wow, wow, wow. And then, you know, from taking over those economies and coming within our organizations and building our own institutions, we'll be able to finance those institutions as well. So every family, every organization in the next phase of our liberation needs to have a business. We need to be running a business. We need to be generating some income. And somehow we need to be able to pull in as well those within our community who have finances. So you're right, we can't rely on those elite puppets. They're doing the bidding of their master. They are giving away the resources of Africa. They're leaving the door wide open, the windows, everything wide open for Africa to be continued to be exploited. So in the next phase of our liberation as a people, we've got to take back power. We've got to take back control. We've got to take back our businesses on our continent. We've got to take back, you know, our economies. We have got to be the ones who are in control of our resources, in control of our businesses, in control of our high streets, in control of our marketplaces, throughout the entire supply chain. Absolutely critical. Agree with all of what you said there. We have been being fed by others for far too long. Africa can feed itself, and we must feed itself. So family, if you're watching right now and you don't belong to a Pan-African organization, that is the next important step that you need to take. Join a Pan-African organization, pull your finances together and run some sort of business. It starts small and grow. Most businesses grow over generations, over time. And so, you know, don't expect to have overnight success. We're talking about a pace that is going to be much slower than most of us would want, but, you know, we will see the results. Just like our founding fathers, our founding revolutionary fathers, they were like 50 years in the planning and the organizing and the strategizing before they managed to secure their independence. But they knew that there would be a day when they would secure their independence. You know, we've let them down terribly, but as you can hear, family, the next generation have got their eyes wide open and they see what time of day it is. We've got our brother Pigbin. He's not on camera at the moment. Brother Pigbin, you're back with us. Okay. Please do, stay on camera. Support, you know, the contributions from others, my brother. You know, we want to hear from you. And we want to hear, we want to see you as well. So family, you heard a little brief introduction there earlier by our brother Pigbin. Let's bring him back, and then we're going to bring back our brother Kwame as well. So let me just remind the family as well, something that I put out a little earlier. Africa is not poor. Africa is just poorly managed. Africa has the potential to become the powerhouse of the future. And the vision is for a transformed, industrialized Africa, totally liberated, free from colonial and neo-colonial oppressors, free from external manipulation, free from the proxy wars and the induced impoverishment. And, you know, such a transformation requires our collective action. And so, you know, join an organization, a Pan-African organization, if you're not already a member of one, and get involved, because the struggle is real. Brother Pigbeam, we're talking about the next steps that we need to be taken in order to transform Africa from where she's at today to becoming the Africa of the future that we all want her to be. Give us a picture of your vision of Africa of the future, so that we know the direction of travel that we need to be going in, please.
Oh, greetings once again, and thank you very much, my sister. I would like, first of all, to take us back a bit in the three phases. The first phase was the slavery phase, where African man was hunted like an animal, and African men were finding it very hard to leave the continent. They gave their life in the transatlantic just to defend their continent. They were not ready at all to walk away from their continent. No matter how maybe the white thought that Africa was not fit for Africans, but Africans could not imagine that there could be anywhere on this continent, on this world, that could be better than Africa. This phase, of course, there were weaknesses that we must learn. The white man came as a friend, joined us, found us very civilized and organized. We had structures, judiciary system was working, age set was working, education, everything political was working. We had our system on how to come up with the council of elders, the kings. We had our system working. We had our spirituality running. We had our everything, places of religion and worship were running. We were organized. Therefore, the white man, in order to disorganize us, decided to come as a friend. Then in order to fight us, they recruited other black men who fought, like in Togo, the kingdom of Togo. Moshit kingdom were fought by black men. So white man realized that he cannot come alone to face the black man. So he decided to recruit black men on their side as soldiers who could now help the white man to fight the black man to bring him down. That is how we were brought down. The white man conquered us through our fellow black men. The lesson we must learn, that sometimes we are the enemy of ourselves. That phase went along that way. They changed our system. They brought the gun. Somebody said somewhere that God never created men equal. It's he who discovered revolver that made all men equal. The white man with a gun on his hand, he felt more equal to African because he was so inferior and fearing the Africans. And that's why they were doing the lynching of Africans and castration all over, so that we could not reproduce anymore. And they feared our population that could overcome them. So the inferiority complex was, of course, replaced by the discovery of gun and ammunition. And that's why they disposed guns, drugs, and everything else at the disposal of black minds, so that we can destroy ourselves with it. And we are going in it blindly. We buy guns every day. Why should we arm our countries with ammunition? Why should a country budget for warfare? Who do you want to fight? Kill another black man? And that's why in Congo, black men are fighting with the Rwandese. In Cameroon, it's black man killing black man. In Sudan, it's a black man killing black man. This is what happened in the previous phase. That was in the first phase. In the second phase, in the early 1900s, the black man realized that it's time to fight for his freedom, that he can be a free man. Marcus Mosiah Garvey talked about our race. We must maintain racial purity. We must organize ourselves under union structures. And Marcus Mosiah Garvey started the journey for repatriation. To him, he believed that repatriation and where Africans belong is Africa. So his vision to make Africa great was to bring Africans back home. Those who left forcefully were to be back home to make Africa great. That period in early 1900, when even King Haile Selassie was attacked, there was African Liberation Support Committee that was created in the US to support Africa. There were people who came from the Caribbean to come and fight alongside Haile Selassie. So people were ready to stand in solidarity. This is the phase for freedom. And this is the phase where Kwame Nkrumah and the Pan-African conferences came about. And in early 1958, the African Freedom Day was discovered, or actually convened. And this is the day that Africans could fight for their freedom. And that took struggle. In Kenya, it took the Mau Mau freedom fighters who went in the forest to fight for the freedom of African Kenya. In other countries, it was violent or peaceful. But actually, in early 1600s, 1960s, most of African countries attained what was called freedom. But even with the freedom, they realized that freedom cannot make you liberated. And therefore, the third phase of liberation came in. And that's when in 1963, 25th May, the day of African Liberation Day was actually conceived. And up to date, 60 years down the line, we are still in the phase for liberation. And as one said, Chancellor Williams said, that despite of African man being made free physically, he has voluntarily decided to enslave his mind. So this phase is unlike colonial phase for independence, where it was physical war. The phase we are in is mental revolution and the mental liberation. And this, many people call it mental emancipation. Because we, after the independence of the freedom, decided to look like white man. Of course, they came with system of education, religion, sex, and politics, and so many other things. We decided to borrow their democracy and copy-paste it in Africa. We decided to practice their education. Today, we are speaking their language. And this is what one of the writer, Ngugi wa Thiong'o, talks of, the decolonization of mind, that the language is a carrier of culture. The more we embrace foreign language, we embrace their culture at the expense of our culture. We now call our names their names. We are called James, Kennedy, Mohammed, anybody else. We actually became captured mentally. And as Steve Biko said, the greatest weapon in the hand of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. So in this phase we are in is the war for mental liberation. This is what I can define this phase to be. And the plans and the programs for liberation were already put in place. Kwame Nkrumah gave this plan in Africa Must Unite. He gave us the plan economically, neocolonialism, the last phases of imperialism. But what is lacking? What is lacking is that we, the younger generation and the older generation, are not ready to read our history. And therefore, we are trying to reinvent the wheel, thinking of coming up with a plan and program. The plans and the program for the liberation of Africa were already set in place. What we need is to implement the plan. We need to come together, organize ourselves into what, of course, Thomas Sankara called the mass party or the vanguard party or mass movement, so that together in mass movement, we can actually liberate the people. This phase of mental revolution needs every African mind to be changed. When Africans were dying not to get out of the continent, today Africans are dying to get out of the continent. They are dying in the Mediterranean Sea, running away from Africa. That mindset must be changed. We cannot celebrate an Africa that is not liberated. And the liberation of Africa has been, of course, impeded by the political power. The white mind actually realized that if you control the politicians and the politics of Africa, you can get access to their resources, and through their resources, you can continue dominating them. Why should the former colonies of French still deposit their money in France and still get it in terms of loan? Why should Africans still look for loans to develop Africa while we have the numbers, we have the resources, and we have the capability? So this mindset is what needs to be changed. And this call for mass education, civil education, door-to-door awareness, and awareness creation. We must re-educate the mind of an African. And until we realize that we have the power to liberate Africa, until we realize that we are one. I'm not a Kenyan, Ugandan fighting each other. We are one, and our problem are one. Nkrumah says that in the steps to develop Africa, Africa must first of all be liberated. Once it is liberated, it must be united. Once it is united, it must now be developed. So we are fighting for the unity of Africa without taking in consideration the liberation of Africa. How can you unite an Africa whose president is a puppet of the West? Nkrumah once said that we neither look west nor east. We must look forward as Africa. The East is coming in as a friend to Africa. The West is coming in to dictate the Africa, and Africans are tossed in between West or East. We are non-aligned. The only place we are aligned with is forward, and that is for the African affairs. Today, they dictate for Museveni for having passed the LGBTQ. Where are the Africans? There's no solidarity at all. So the solidarity of Africa must be awakened again. We must be strongly in action. The white man is not controlling us through shows and seminars and conferences and talks. They have a plan, and they're putting their resources in that plan to continue colonizing it. What do we have as Africans? Will you only liberate ourselves through talks? We need a plan, and we must put our resources to liberate Africa. That is the future we must actually invest in. So the young people must be taught about these philosophies, ideologies, and liberation of Africa. They must think beyond their politicians. And the politicians, as I will say, the Pan-Africans need their Pan-African politicians and leaders. They are training our young people through Obama Foundation and so many other leadership programs. They're already looking ahead on who is the next African leader, and they're taking them to the Western education of leadership, so that when we think that we are changing, we still land to their face. What are we doing as Pan-African? Are we training our next generation of leaders? What are we doing? Are we putting our resources to the liberation of Africa? Those of Africans in diaspora, will you really come back home as the vision of Marcus Mosiah Garvey? If he was to deliver his unionship, will you come back home? Or do you think that Africa is only there for the poor Africans, and that you are out there things like you're whiter than Africans and you don't suffer anything? No matter where we are, just like George Floyd, they still see you as an African. They still demean you. No matter how rich you are out there, they will not see your value. Your value can only be realized at your home. It's time we come together to build Africa we want. And this is my quest. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Brother Pigbin. Absolutely agree with all that you've said there. We need to come back home, most definitely, as the diaspora, work alongside our brothers and sisters on the ground to build the Africa that we want to see. Agree with you in terms of the work that needs to be done to liberate the mind. And, you know, as you've already quoted before, Steve Biko and others have said, you know, who controls the mind? You know, well, the most powerful weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. Wow. Because if you can control a man's thinking, you know, as Dr. Carr said, you don't need to worry about what he does or what he doesn't do. And this is why we're in the position that we are in as the people as a whole, because our mind has been controlled. We've been so miseducated. We've been indoctrinated with someone else's culture, someone else's mindset. So we're thinking like them, we're behaving like them. We're not in our right African mind. And so one of our priorities absolutely has to be education. And this is what we were talking about earlier today, the importance of the Pan-African curriculum. And you've added in the importance of a Pan-African leadership program. Pan-African leadership programs that's preparing our leaders for tomorrow, because they're definitely busily preparing their leaders for tomorrow as well. And we've got to come together to implement that plan. So what I do know is that there are many of us in the diaspora who want to, you know, bring our skills and whatever we've got, the knowledge of, you know, being in Europe, working alongside, you know, the white man and seeing how his system works and everything. You know, we want to bring anything and everything that we can bring back home towards the liberation of our people, because as you've rightly pointed out, you know, how if Africa is weak, we are all weak wherever we are in the world. If Africa is not respected, the black man and the black woman is not going to be respected wherever they are in the world. And so we all do need to come together as mass and in solidarity to bring about the changes that we want to see. And a Pan-African centered curriculum, essential. You know, with our own definitions, ideologies and philosophies, essential. And, you know, our own Pan-African leadership training program. Now, I know Brother Kwame would love to add to that, because, you know, we're talking about reaching the mind of our people. How, Brother Kwame, do we reach the mind, the spirit, the soul of our people with the Pan-African message? How do we begin to stir up, you know, our people to become agitators, activists, and people who are actively involved and contributing in some shape or form towards the total liberation and independence of us as Africans? Brother Kwame.
Oh, thank you so much, Sister Shanice. I would like to thank my brother Pigeon and my brother Kabbalah. I have so much to say about this topic that I don't even know where to begin with, but I'll just proceed with the question which you posed. How do we motivate our people to take action. Of course, after understanding the times we are living in, that it is the right time, the timing is right for us to start agitating, looking at the things that have been happening. Is important for us to be motivated, and the motivation itself, of course, comes through knowledge. Without knowledge, it is the man with knowledge who is confident. As you have seen, people like Kwame Nkrumah mentioned that when he read, the book, the philosophy and opinions of Marcus Garvey, he said that that book fired him up. When you look at people like Malcolm X, when they went to prison and they read a lot of books, they came out with a lot of knowledge, and he was so fired up, and he said, I have to fight. I cannot allow my people, to be denigrated or degraded in this situation. I have to fight for them. So I believe that our people have to be in that knowledge, have to be equipped with that knowledge. And in a few minutes, I will suggest some of the things which I believe that are important and should be important, to our people, and they need to pick up because we are not, we as revolutionaries on the front, my brother Kabbalah, Pigeon, Sister Shanice, and all the others, Africans Rising, my brother Hadi Akubu, out there in Africans Rising, who is fighting for a borderless Africa, who has a campaign that is going on, my brother, in South Africa, or Azania, what we call Azania, the regional name, all these, my brothers and sisters, my sister Shanice, my elder, all this knowledge that for us we have, we are not going to tell the average African that he should go out there, or our fellow Africans. I will not say our average African, but our fellow Africans, that they should go out there to read a book or two or something. But those ones who can't, they should. I believe that we need to have that understanding that we as a people, we have what it takes as Africans. Number one, we have what it takes, to finish the struggle of what Dr. Kwame Nkrumah's daughter, Samia Nkrumah, calls the unfinished business. The unfinished business is the business of liberating Africa, in the next phase, the phase which we are in. As Pigeon mentioned, Nkrumah envisioned that the first stage was the regaining of Africa's independence. The next phase, which was supposed to be the second phase, was for the consolidation of Africa's independence. And that consolidation of Africa's independence was supposed to come through unification. We are supposed to unify. Now, that was going to be the process of consolidation of Africa's independence. Now, the third phase was supposed to be the reconstruction, what he called the reconstruction phase. Now we are going to start building Africa at a rapid rate, even at a rate even faster than what we have seen in China. That China has developed, within a period of less than 30 years. Oh, we saw what Singapore did, Lee Kuan Yew did in Singapore. But more so, our predicament is much more similar to what happened in China, because China also was colonized, by these European powers, and then it had to struggle and then unify, of course, up to today. Recently, 1997, unified Hong Kong and put it back to, to the mainland. And then they are still struggling against the same colonial countries to unify Taiwan and put it back to, to China mainland and unify it. So you see that our predicament is sort of closely related to China, that it had to struggle. It has similar situation like ours. So Nkrumah envisioned that unification, that we have to unify to consolidate. But unfortunately, we were not able to consolidate the independence. And so the independence was interfered with because he cried so much that they should give him a united Africa. And then he will, help, even gave the decision, gave some suggestions at the formation of the Organization of African Unity, of course, which we are celebrating. We are celebrating 60 years of, Africa Liberation Day. The AU celebrating 60 years of the AU and the Organization of African Unity. So he gave particular suggestions, but unfortunately, we were not able to pick up, that stick and give it to him so that he would be able to help to shape the new Africa as we would have wanted it to be. So I want to suggest that we are capable of achieving the task before us. We are capable of putting a brick on the wall of the new Africa that we want, the Africa that we want to reconstruct. We are capable. I want us to have that understanding that regardless of the challenges that are standing before us, these challenges are not new. Many people have faced these challenges which we have today. We spoke about our ancestors in Haiti. They did not even have 10% of the resources which we have today as Africans. They did not have the liberties which we have today as Africans. You can go around, the whole world. I know that the racists are killing George Floyd and this, but we still have certain liberties today which our ancestors did not have, and yet they were able to liberate Africa. They were able, imagine a people with no weapons, no businesses, no money. They were able to mobilize themselves, slaves with no houses, nothing, no jobs, and defeat 3 superpowers, defeat Spain, defeat France, which was a superpower that time, defeat Britain when it wanted to put them back, into slavery. With nothing, they had nothing. So compare that to us and what we have today. So there's no excuse. There's no excuse. So that is the basis. That is the point from which I'm basing to say that we are capable. And regardless of the challenges that we may look at as formidable in our time, our ancestors had much more challenges than what we had. So you can talk of the political, the enemies from outside, the imperialists. But when you look at the United States and Europe, these are countries which are in huge problems right now, that they are so weakened. The only thing that is they are possessing right now, they possess is just intimidation of others. My brother Pigeon has just mentioned here the intimidation of President Museveni in Uganda. Of course, President Museveni also is questionable. His type of leadership is questionable when it comes to Pan-Africanism. But the point I'm trying to make here is that the only weapon they have right now is intimidation. You have seen how they are intimidating South Africa because South Africa is trying to, to host President Putin, for the BRICS conference. So the only weapon they are remaining with today is intimidation. They don't have that economic power. They cannot put us back into, the news and lynch us like how they did during the Jim Crow, era. They cannot put us back into the chains. Of course, we understand that they still have a grip on our minds in certain way. But the point I'm trying to make is that we are ready and we have the ability, we have the capability, we have so much resources that we can be able to take on this struggle. We have the internal enemies, of course, the internal enemies within the African landscape itself, the various African leaders, neo-colonial puppets, of course, but these are challenges still. If we are talking to each other, if we sit down as Africans who are on the front line, we can find a solution to this, agitation. There is different methods which we can use, the building, like my brother Kabbalah mentioned, with the building of our own new institutions and pushing those institutions in a certain way that they feel threatened and they have to work on our behalf instead of working for neo-colonialism. With that being said, those challenges we have to them, but we have to understand also that as Africans on the continent, we have to work with the African diaspora. And when I speak about the African diaspora, I mean all people of African descent, like how Nkrumah put it, that all people of African descent, whether they live in North America, Caribbean, South America, in any part of the world, are Africans and belong to the African nation. And this puts a lot of fear, of course, in the neo-colonialists. But I would like the African people all across the globe to understand that we have an obligation to build ourselves a new civilizational state, a new civilizational African state, because we have had civilizations which have existed here for more than 6,000 years, more than anywhere before Europe, knew about anything, knew about civilization. They came here to learn. Before they were living in caves, they just came out of caves just recently. That is the reason why when you go to all over Europe, you cannot find a reasonable structure which is as old as 2,000 years. But when you come to Africa, you can find structures which have existed for more than 6,000 years. So these are just guests, to civilization, which they learned from, our people. So this is the very reason that we cannot fear them. We cannot fear them because we are equal to them, or even much more because we taught them what they know. When you go back to history and examine, the works of Chika Anta Diop, you go back and examine the histories, all the histories of, Dr. Henry, John Henry Clark, all these things have been written there. So this should be giving us, this should give us confidence. And we as Africans, we have to work together in the diaspora, whether you call yourself Jamaican, you are African diaspora, whether you call yourself African American, whatever name you give yourself. Oh, I hear these days they are calling themselves African descendants of slaves, ADOS, and then fundamentally, there's a lot of confusion even today which has come up, fundamentally Black Americans and stuff like that. These are all Africans, and there should not be any confusion about it. So we have supposed to understand that regardless of the challenges which we have, we as a people united together as Africans, we can deliver the goods, and the goods we can deliver is the reconstruction of our civilizational state, like Nkrumah mentioned. And then we have to capitalize, of course, on the advantages which we have. The bad things which are happening to us have been spoken. They have been spoken about, they have been talked about, but what about the good things that we have as this continent, the advantages that we have as this continent? What are they? More than the continent of Africa alone, if we don't put even the GDP of the diaspora, the continent of Africa alone, $3.5 trillion, $3.5 trillion of GDP. Now that makes us the fifth biggest economy in the world. An economy which will be ahead of Britain, which will be ahead of India. But because our economy is disintegrated and dispersed, that means that power is not consolidated. We have a huge population on this African continent, 1.4 billion people. If you put our diaspora and you add it, we have almost more than 2 billion people. We are the biggest population on the planet. So these are all advantages. So why am I saying all these? These things are supposed to give us confidence. They're supposed to give us confidence that yes, we can. We have what it takes. And our enemy, we can face him. We can face him head on because our ancestors have already accomplished, much more formidable, tasks and face these challenges. We have the resources of the African continent. Africa, when we say we can develop it in less than a generation, even faster than what China has achieved. If we consolidate it as a continent, we are in the middle of the world. We are at the center of the world. Imagine if we were manufacturing things on the continent, in the eastern part of the continent, you manufacture goods which you think that can go to China or to Asia, can be able to serve Asia. You manufacture goods in the northern part of the continent, which you think can be able to serve Europe. You manufacture things in the western part, which you think can be able to serve the United States and South America. We are at the center of the world. So if there's anywhere that is better than any place to do business, it is Africa, actually. And it is unfortunate that even our heads of state today have not, understood this very well. Or I will not call them leaders. They are heads of state. They are heads of state because they have engaged in so much misleadership. So these realities have not been discovered by some of these people. These are the attractions that we can capitalize on as Africans. We are at the center of the world. Imagine China right now is the manufacturing center of the world, but it is manufacturing goods way far from the eastern part of the world and transporting those goods to the United States. Imagine those goods if they were manufactured in Africa. That means you are at the center. There's no opportune place. There's no better place of doing business where business and industrialization will be able to run like in Africa, and business will be cheaper to do. But of course, we are stigmatized. Now, these are supposed to be advantages for us. Sister Shanice, are you saying something? I can see that you are muted. You're muted.
Yeah. Oh, am I? Oh, no, I shouldn't be muted. Yeah. Are you not hearing me?
No, you are still muted.
Oh, that's strange. Okay. And then on again. Okay.
Oh, Sister Shanice, we can't hear you.
No, we can hear you.
Okay. You can hear me. So is it just Kwame who can't hear me? Okay. Right. Hold it there, please, Brother Kwame. I will come back to you. You've just triggered, something else that I did want to touch on. And I know Brother Pigeon's got to leave very soon as well. So I'd like the opportunity to go around again. We will come back around to you again, Brother Kwame. You were talking about, the industrialization of Africa there. And, I was watching a presentation by one of our colleagues, one of our brothers, who was talking about climate change. And we all know the extent to which climate change has actually been a narrative that has crippled Africa, that has kind of suppressed Africa's potential for industrialization. Well, one of our Pan-African brothers has said just what you were saying there as well. What we need to do, instead of digging up all of Africa's minerals and transporting it to the other side of the world, to the factories, and manufacturing companies on the other side of the world, if we're serious about climate change, then what we need to be doing is we need to be developing industries, we need to be developing factories, we need to be putting these factories next to where the minerals are. So that means, having factories and manufacturing companies on the continent of Africa, near where all the mines and near where all of these minerals that are leaving the country are actually being dug up from. That way, we're going to cut down on the carbon emissions. We're going to cut down on the, the what they call it, ecozone footprint, or whatever they call it. It makes so much sense, does it not? Let me bring back my brother Pigbean, who's going to have to leave very soon, to comment on the industrialization of Africa and how that can happen. And does he, in the future, looking forward for Africa, see an Africa where the factories and the industries, that are converting African resources and materials, being placed on the continent itself? Let's hear our brother Pigbean. Or do you see a different future for Africa, different technology, different priorities? Let's hear from you, my brother Pigbean.
Thank you very much once again, sister. Indeed, America is almost quarter of Africa in terms of population. They have built their industries. We are 1 point something billion, they're 300 million. We can build something massive combined to all Europe and America. We, the Black African, the Negroes, are the people who have built America. We work in the sugar plantation to build Europe. What can we not build for ourselves? Nothing. We can build anything for ourselves. The mineral in Congo is driving US, it's driving China, it's driving Europe. Why is it that Africans are running out of Africa to go look for greener pastures, while the West and the East are running to Africa for the pasture? It is the mind. They are coming in full force in Africa to look for what? For the pasture. You are running out of Africa to go out there to look for what? For the pasture. We must change our mind. The River Congo can supply electricity for the whole Africa. The River Congo alone can lighten every village in the Africa. The gold in Congo can build anything for Africa. Our climate is conducive for ourselves. The white man cannot come with these climatical issues to dictate on our different temperature and environment in Africa. After all, they're the people who are emitting most of carbon, not us. Ethiopia, Nigeria, Uganda are struggling to come up with their own vehicles. We can do it. Africa must see itself as a resource and a market. Resources in Africa with a population of 1.something billion is enough to be exploited by Africans. 1.something billion Africans are enough market. We don't need to sell our thing anywhere out of Africa. We can sell it to ourselves and we can buy it. We don't need to import anything out of Africa. We can build it ourselves. But the problem is simple, as my brother Kabbalah had said it. The groups of the West are coming. Like now, I was in a meeting yesterday between Kenya and US trade agreement. It's called AGOA, with so many other countries. The US want access to market in Africa. Why do they want our market access? They want to build their industries in Africa, employ our people to pay them only peanut salaries, then export the all profit back to US. We were taken to work in their farm by force. Now we are welcoming them. We are welcoming them back as investors. People who enslaved us, people who killed us, people who killed our ancestors are now coming in as investors to invest in a colony and in countries where they ruled for 300 years and left it underdeveloped. Today they're talking about debts that we owe them. We gave them our country, okay. They took over our countries, they mismanaged it. Who should pay who the debt? They have not paid our reparation, they have not paid our restitution, they have not paid our repatriation, and so many other things. So I talk of the mindset. Dagonte is now building an oil company, or he has built an oil company in Nigeria. He has shown us that we can build our resources in Africa. Our politicians and presidents have stashed billions and trillions of money abroad, overseas. They loot from Africa, they stash it abroad. Billions of our resources are abroad. It is clear that we can build Africa, but only if we have people with the right mind. The business class and the politicians today want to take anything from Africa, and they want to take it out to Europe. For what purpose? So what I will say is simple. It is time the Africans must look within themselves. The Africa Free Trade Agreement is something good for us. Africa Development Bank is purely funded by the West, not even Africa. It is very sad. So Africa must develop. We must start with our common need and basic need. We need clothing. So why don't we start the textile industries for all Africa? Let's put on clothes from all parts of Africa. Let's go to our shoes. Let's go to our phones. Let's go to our house equipment. We can do it in Africa. So I will say that Africa is ripe for anything. Industrialized, anything Africa is ripe for. Even if you have to come with our own currency now, we have 1.something billion people can use that currency. It will be the most powerful currency in the whole world. But why are you not doing this? It's because of the puppet leadership that has been taken into the pockets of the West. And now the leadership is the enemy of the Africans. Why should you be a leader and your people are suffering? Why? Why do you need to be a leader then? If you cannot transform the life of our people, what do you need? So we have people who are in business. They're even taking now, the government is now becoming a private entity. IMF, World Bank, and the rest are now dictating and controlling Africa. Those are not technical assistants, they're technical assassins to assassinate and complete Africa. So we must look inward. We must build Africa. We must not look west nor east. Anything and everything that is in the west has come from east. Anything that is building the east is from Africa. So west or east is feeding on Africa. It is time that Africa must feed on itself. We are capable. And yes, we can. Thank you. You are muted, sister.
Sorry about that, just struggling to find my mute button there. Thank you so much, Brother Pigman. Again, spot on in terms of all of what you were saying there about us industrialists industrializing Africa and bringing industry to the continent, that we ourselves are responsible for managing, owning, and controlling. This is where, you know, they got us in the past, isn't it? They had us working on the continent, in their plantations, on their farms. They took control. But no, what we've got to do as a people, we've got to own those factories. We've got to have control of those factories, and also be the ones who are managing it and reaping the benefits and the profits for our people. Otherwise, Africa will never, ever be developed, because, as our brother was saying, all of the profits will simply just go to the foreigners who have invested and who are financing those industries. So yes, my brother, as we talk about, you know, the need to bring those industries closer to those mines and closer to the source of the raw materials, and as that narrative gathers momentum, you know what these people are like. Oh, okay. So they're now suggesting that the factories should be in Africa. Well, let us own those factories. Let us be the ones, you know, to set up those factories and have these people work for us there, as you said, for a pittance. No, that's not. We're talking about taking control of having control of those industries that are set up, and having control of the factories, being the managers, being the workers, be it the investors. We're the ones who are going to have to be in control. Just let the Europeans stay in Europe where they are and do their business over there, and the Americans stay over there, and let us come back and build Africa for the benefit of the people. For too long, yeah, the rest of the world have benefited, and their standard of living for their people has been very high, off of the back blood, sweat, and tears of us as Africans. It's time now for our brothers and sisters on the continent to enjoy a better quality of life. We want all the households to have proper housing, running water, electricity, good internet, good communication system, good transport systems, good infrastructure. We need Africa transformed now and brought up to date for the 21st century. And we're the ones also that are going to need to have to set up those schools and training courses to make that happen as well. We are greater than we can even begin to imagine. All of what you were saying, Brother Kwame, if we begin to even look into who we are as a people, we'd be frightened, you know, at how great we really are. You know, we've built empires, kingdoms, and cities, you know, in the past, and we've been doing that for hundreds of thousands of years. We just need to get back into our right mind and get the belief and confidence back in ourselves, so that we can start to do all of that work towards rebuilding Mama Africa. And wow, we're going to have to also have our scientists come up with some force fields as well to protect Mama Africa militarily. But as we was talking about earlier as well, we need to get to know who we are and recognize that the person in the mirror is not our enemy. Our brother is not our enemy. We shouldn't be killing our brothers, and we should not be fighting over these colonial borders that were imposed on us either, you know. And I love the spirit of the young people here, where they're talking about, you know, us as Africans, wherever we are in the world. First and foremost, we're Africans. First and foremost, we are one people. And I love that. That has been consistent among the young Africans on the panel. You know, those who happen to be born in the DRC, happen to have been born in Kenya, happen to have been born in Kenya. You know, we are, as a people, first and foremost, Africans. Let's remember, you know, that our people migrated. Yeah, we spread ourselves all over the world. So we are one people who migrated and spread and populated the rest of the world. We're still from that root. We're still one people. So I want to thank Brother Pickman in his absence for his contribution today. We're going to continue with the discussion, and we also want to rise up everybody in the audience. I've been watching the comments. To those who have joined us, you know, after the show, Sheriff S and Brother Kwame Osei and all the others that have joined us since, you know, the last time I called out some names. Rise you up, Mr. IC3 Black, you know, rise you up, each and every one of you. I see the conversations that you're having. Let's rise each other up. Let's, you know, be the change that we want to see in this world and for Africa. Okay, let's go back to the conversation that we're having today on the show. We're talking about the next phase of our African liberation. We said education, 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 confidence in ourselves, organizing ourselves. We've got to belong to an organization. We've got to contribute towards the works of the organization. We've got to become the owners of the industries that are converting our mineral wealth into finished products. We're the ones who've got to be in control of those levers of power as well. We've got to recognize that the elites are not there to serve us as the masses, and so the masses, needs to get together and organize itself and take control at a grassroots level. So important. So much more has been said about what we need to be doing. Please do check the replay of the show if you have actually missed it. So we're going to go back over to some more questions. We were just talking about climate change there and how much sense it actually makes to bring the factories and the industries onto the continent instead of continuing to transport all of Africa's raw materials and minerals outside of the continent. So going forward, we've got to bring about a change in that regard as well. We need the industrialization on the continent, the jobs on the continent, and all of the benefits that come from all of that as well. And what we do know is that when we start focusing on our industrialization, when we start focusing on building on the continent, it can be achieved within such a short space of time. I'm going to go over to Brother Kabbalah, and as I'm going over to you, my young Brother Kabbalah, I'm thinking about the works and the accomplishments of Marcus Mosiah Garvey, the works and the accomplishments of John Magufuli within that short space of time, the works of the accomplishments of so many of our great leaders who, when they did have the opportunity to bring about the change, they made a major impact, proof and evidence that we, if we are left to be the masters over our own resources and our own destiny, can be the change that we want to see. How, in the next steps moving forward, are we going to bring about that industrialization and that movement for change so that we could begin to realize the vision that we want to see? Brother Kabbalah, back to you.
Well, thank you so much, Queen. Actually, I think I need to say something before regarding global warming, as you mentioned it, the climate change. I think this is an agenda against African liberation and African emancipation. The narrative around the global warming mostly is part of what is called sustainable development. And the theory about sustainable development was created around 1970-something, 1978, if I'm not mistaken. And according to the United Nations Commission on Environment Protection, sustainable development is simply defined as the protection or preservation of the natural resources for the future generation to benefit from those resources. So in simple words, it means we need to refrain from from exploiting our resources, from using our cobalt, using our coltan, using our diamonds, because these resources are depleting the more we're using them, which is good logic. We need to refrain from using more, relying more on those things so that our children can also benefit from those resources, which is, as I said, good logic. However, the question we as African people need to understand or to ask is, do the resources of Africa benefiting us today in the present generation? And the answer is no. We don't benefit from our resources. The resources of Africa today benefit the European children. So the second question is, what makes us believe that our children then will have access or will benefit from these resources that we have to refrain from exploiting? If we don't have access to them today, what tells us that our children will have access to them? So literally, the agenda of sustainable development is to make manipulate African in a way that they have to preserve the resources of Africa so that the future generation of European children will have to benefit from the resources as much as the current generation of European children are benefiting from these resources, you know, because when they are going to their schools, they know already that the job is there because the industries are located in their countries, and those industries are relying on the transforming the resources of Africa. But us, after school, we have no hope. We need to cross the Mediterranean water to join them, as my brother was just saying now. So we don't have access to these resources today. It's the World Trade Organization which control the resources of Africa, and they tell us that we need to preserve them for our future generation to have access to them. Which future generations? European future generations. So for me, I think Africa need to use her resources to industrialize itself. But before even thinking about industrialization, because the reason we want to go for industrialization is to create economic development in Africa. But this is the point. Can you imagine a person who goes at the dealership and buys an expensive car to come and park it in the streets because it doesn't have a secure house and a secure parking where he has to park the car? Then he's buying that car for a thief who's going to come at night and steal the car. That is the same situation with us as African people. When we want to build industries and a strong economy, which we don't have the power to protect it. The struggle in this world is a struggle for power. So for you to think about economic power, firstly, think about the military power to protect your economy. If you don't have the military might to protect and defend your economy, you are building that economy for your enemy or your oppressor who will come and steal it from you. We just have to remember, not long ago, 2011, Barack Hussein Obama or Barack Hussein Obama stole billions of Muammar Gaddafi money, right? Muammar Gaddafi had a lot of money, had enough of it. He was able to fund African Union by himself by about, I don't know, 80%, but you know what he was lacking was the military power to resist NATO, to resist United States imperialism, and to resist even China in, you know, if the case arises. So economic development is fine, but we need to think about how to secure our parking first, how to build a secure house, how to build a parking before we buy an expensive car to come and park in there and secure it. Otherwise, we'll build that economy for our enemies. So this is very simple. As my brother Kwame was just saying now, the GDP of Africa today is above $3 billion US, right? And the last I checked, the continental budgets, when you take all the single colonial enclosures in Africa, the military budget, you put them together in 2016, it was about $42 billion US. And this money dedicated for defense of these African countries was mostly used to buy armed vehicles for the comfort of the head of states, not even to secure, you know, the African population, because when you look in the continent today, you don't see any single country which has the military might to resist France, Belgium, you know, United States, all these imperial countries. So we're spending all these billions of dollars for nothing, for protecting ourselves against nothing, because they don't give us the power to protect ourselves in real sense. So if we can put this money together, 42 to 46 billion that was spent 2016, at least it gives us a basis to build what I can call a continental military, you know, system to defend not one single colonial enclosure, but to defend the whole continent. With this money, we'll be able to build, you know, a ballistic missile or intercontinental ballistic missile that will be positioned in all corners of Africa, East Africa, West Africa, Central Africa, East Africa. If North Africa is willing, we can also consider that. And the reason is to defend and to protect Africa against the oppressors. And from the moment we have a military strategy in place, then it's going to be easier to talk about economic development. You know, it's going to be easier to talk about economic development, and economic development actually will put itself in place. So this is how I see the industrialization of Africa, because the European countries know well that industrialization of Africa is a demise of economic of European economic system. For example, France, they don't have resources. And one of the French authorities was asked at some time, why does France called a superpower while it doesn't have resources? And what he said was, well, we don't have resources, but we have ideas. Can idea give food or put food on your table? No. So basically, those ideas are about exploiting Africa. That's the reason why French government will come to Africa and cut the trees, or chop the trees in Africa, and use those trees to print papers that they call franc CFA, which is the currency used by 14 countries in Africa, which are colonial, or which are part of French colonial countries. So they print those monies by taking the trees in Africa to print those money and store those monies in France and telling African countries, come with your gold to back up this money. And then they take that papers, give back to the African country in exchange of African gold and African diamonds, African timber and stuff like that. So we don't have, how can I put it? We are not allowed to industrialize ourselves, because once we build industries, once we begin to transform our cobalt, our zinc, our manganese right here in Africa, France will go into the state of third world country. Germany, the same thing. Britain, the same thing. So they won't allow you to industrialize yourself. Even this deal of African continental free trade is a good idea, but is it really the ideal? That's the question. So I think what we need to begin with as a Pan-Africanist, or with the agenda of Pan-Africanist, is to begin by building a continental army to defend Africa. And from there, we now can jump on economic development. What is getting us stuck at this moment is actually the, how can I put it, selfishness of African head of states, as my brother called them nicely. They're head of states. They are not even presidents. Is all about, I want to be in charge. I am the one in charge. I am the one, but you are in charge of nothing, because for you to run your stuff, you need to run to the World Bank to beg for money there. When even Turkey called African Forum, all of them, all the Negroes are going there to answer to Turkey. And when China called African Forum, all of them are there to Beijing. When Russia, so these are the people that we have. They don't want to look at the real picture and to do the most important thing, which is about giving Africa the power that we need to emancipate and liberate ourselves. So I do support industrialization of Africa, regardless of global warming and stuff like that. Even though it's considered a serious matter, but right now the first law in human, or in the first law of nature, is self-preservation. So Africa must use its resources to preserve itself. Africa must industrialize itself to preserve itself. But for that to happen better, we need to begin by building continental army to protect and defend ourselves, protect and defend our economy, and then move to the economic development. That's how I look at the agenda of industrialization of Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Brother Kabbalah. I have to agree with you. You know, we have to come together as a continent and have a continental-wide army that's own interest is about protecting Africa, protecting African resources, and protecting the civilians of Africa. Absolutely agree. If we're unable to protect ourselves and our resources and our interests, then we're just going to continue to be exploited. So that absolutely has to be a major priority. Definitely agree with you on that, my brother. And yeah, also I agree with you, and I say this all the time. When are we going to stop exchanging our minerals, our gold, our diamonds, and our coltan for little bits of color paper? Because at the end of the day, that's what the dollar is, a bit of colorful paper. That's what the pound is, a bit of colorful paper. And in exchange for this colorful paper, we're giving them our gold, our diamonds, our coltan, our oil and everything. You know, centuries ago, we were giving them all of our wealth in exchange for beads, or so they say, in exchange for mirrors and trinkets. So are our future generations going to be looking back and saying they gave away all of our wealth for colorful bits of paper that they called money? because obviously the future of being maybe the digital age. And I'd be saying, how could they have exchanged so much African wealth for these colorful bits of paper? They just won't be able to understand it. So we've got to wake up. My brother Kwame, let's give you 10 minutes. We are, about 14 minutes away or less from the top of the hour. Let me give you 10 of those minutes. And, I've been looking at the chat. There's a lot of dialogue going on there. We thank you, each and every one of you, for the support, the comments that you're making in the chat. Some of you have been quite challenging. I can see that going on as well, but each one teach one. Let's rise each other up. Brother Kwame, let me give you, maybe 7 minutes now. Time is ticking. Over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Sister Shanice. Let me run through it very quickly. When it comes to industrialization, of course, it's very important. Like King Kabbalah said, we have to industrialize. There's no any way out. We have to modernize. Africa has to industrialize, like we say. We have everything that it takes, and we have to push it. We don't have any other option. We don't have any other option, and it has to be urgent. It has to be within this generation. This generation has to contribute. We cannot leave our continent to be degraded and continue to be exploited, and our people continue to be killing, continue to be killed and disrespected all across the globe. We've spoken about George Floyd numerous times, Sandra Bland, and many others who have been killed recklessly like that. So we have to industrialize, like Malcolm X said. If we are not strong as Africans, or any black man across the globe will not be respected, or black man or black woman will not be respected. So we have to build the continent at all costs with everything that we have within us, because we have the confidence that we can, and we must have the confidence that we can do it. I want to reference the speech which was given by President Ruto recently at the Pan-African Parliament in South Africa. He said that we have to industrialize. If they are talking about the people who are talking about climate change and how we should adopt, clean energies, we don't have to fight them and point fingers, at them and say, why are you telling this? You polluted the most and stuff like that. And of course they polluted. When you look at the figures, Europe and the United States, they have contributed almost more than 75% to the pollution, to global, pollution. Africa has contributed less than 3%. Okay, so, but I like the suggestion he put out there. He said that, okay, if they want to talk about clean energy and the use of clean energy, how Africa should use clean energy, then let us talk about industrialization. Let us come with a solution. As Africans, we should go with those solutions. And I'm glad that President Ruto is going to have a conference, an African, climate change summit, which is going to a climate summit, which is going to happen in Nairobi in August. It is to consolidate the African position. So he said that if they are talking about we should adopt clean energies in the industrialization as Africans, then let us shift the production of the things like, of things like bauxite and steel. Let us refine it in Africa using the clean energy, bring the capital, and then we will do that. We will adopt the clean energies. We will invest in the solar. We will invest in the nuclear energy. We will invest in the wind energy. So this is the test. This is the test of how serious the people who are talking about climate change, are viable. This is the real test of the people who are talking about climate change. Now, when they do this, and of course, during the Paris climate change, which happened, they committed themselves to $100 billion, which is supposed to be given, to the global South, of course, including Africa included, and the other countries, which have contributed actually the less, much less. Like we mentioned, Africa has contributed only 3%. Europe and the United States have contributed more than 70% to global pollution. So they committed themselves and they did not deliver the $100 billion. So right now, what we are saying, and with me seconding or supporting President Ruto's suggestion, that we should tell them, bring the production to Africa. We should produce with clean energy because it will remove more than, for example, the production of steel alone that is produced all across the globe, or the steel, the bauxite which we are exporting as Africans. If we produce it in Africa, it will reduce production, to reduce the pollution by more than 30 million tons of carbon dioxide out of the environment. So this is the contribution that we are going to, to make towards clean energy. And this is the test, like I said, of the seriousness of the people who are talking about climate change and clean energy. And if they cannot do it like how they failed, and we know they are not going to do it because they failed to honor their commitments during the Paris climate change of $100 billion a year to the global south, then it is a chance for us to use any means necessary to industrialize ourselves as Africans, because we have 2 instances already of them failing to honor their commitments. And this time, because they failed to honor their commitment, climate change commitments, then this time we are the ones who are bringing the suggestions. We are the ones who are bringing the ideas. That is what President Ruto mentioned, that we should bring the ideas. We don't want to be on the table being consumed, like what PLO Lumumba normally says. We don't want to be on the table being consumed. This time we are coming as Africans, we are coming with our own suggestions to contribute towards this agenda. And this will help Africa to industrialize. And if they don't do it, then we have a right to go and do whatever we want, dig our oil, drill our oil, consume our resources the way we want, regardless of what they are saying. And that requires us as Africans, and especially the African youth, to be on the forefront, to support such leaders who have interesting ideas. We have leaders actually on this continent. Not all of our leaders are puppets, but we as the youth, and especially the Pan-African organizations, we need to consolidate our efforts, our strategy, and then talk also, because we have to consolidate all the forces on the continent, the progressive forces on the continent that are working for Pan-Africanism. So the Pan-African forces have to consolidate, come and work with the progressive Pan-African leaders, those ones who are showing signs that they want to go in the right direction for the African continent. We need to go there and engage them as Africans with the ideas. Support also the ideas which they have. Me and my organization, Connect Africa, we are in the process of writing to President, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. We are in the process of writing to the Prime Minister, Abiy Ahmed, and the President William Ruto, to support him on the speech which he gave in South Africa. How many people listened to the speech which President Ruto gave? It was one of the most powerful speeches, I can guarantee you, on this African continent this year. It was one of the most powerful because it is talking about the very things that we are discussing here. Industrialization, rapid industrialization. He mentioned that we want Africa to be the next industrial powerhouse, like how China has been. And if you are talking about clean energy, then come in and finance that clean energy, because you have the money, but you are using it on Wall Street to speculate and cause global, meltdowns and global depressions, economic depressions. So as African youth, we have to be on the forefront. Pan-Africanists, we have to be on the forefront. And we are confident that this thing can be done because our ancestors have done it before. Now, the responsibility lies in our hands.
So hold it there, my brother. Oh, Kwame, we're going to have to invite you back again. I mean, I know you've got so much that you want to say, but we are 4 minutes away from the top of the hour. I want to thank our Zoom participant as well, who says, thank you so much for organizing this Zoom. I am so impressed with the panelists. The major problem in Africa is one of leadership. Our leaders across Africa are not patriotic and are very selfish. I think we'd all agree with our audience member on that, and says that this discussion gives us a large and vivid educational sense that will spur all of us on to put our hands to the deck. for the emancipation of Africa. Well, isn't that what we wanted to accomplish? My beautiful panelists, Brother Kwame Gonza, thank you so much. We don't even have time. Let's go over to the YouTube channel and just thank everybody there. Let me just pull out a comment, a random one. The Jamia Kanjanka says, wherever they put black faces in high places, they are getting ready to move on the colored people of the world, using black faces as the tip of the spear. I think he's talking about, in England right now, where we've got a brown president, someone of Indian origin, and the Home Secretary is Asian, all these Asian people in these positions, very senior positions. So he's saying, watch out. Because what we should learn from our history is that anytime they put these black faces and brown faces in position of power, they're ready to move on us as a people, and they're using them as the tip of the spear. Wow. Brother Aboji, thank you so much. He's saying, wow, a lot of our people blind, deaf, and dumb. We've got a job to do to wake them up in that case. Mr. IC3 Black, talking about, how they weakened the African bits of colorful paper. But your currency could be weak according to their marketplace and their banks. But if we keep using it and we keep turning it over and we keep valuing it, it will gain value, okay? We've got to support our own currencies. If we're going to keep selling our currencies and exchanging it for dollars or exchanging it for pounds and what have you, and not putting any value in our own currency, then it will never have any value whatsoever. And we can use, our currency within our communities to get things done. But we all have to appreciate, the value of our currency. Wow. So the time has literally flown by so quickly. I don't know where the 2 hours have gone already. I was hoping I'd have time to bring back our brother Kabbalah, but you have already said so much, some brilliant scholarly analysis and remarks we've had on the show today from our panelists. I just want to thank you so much, Brother Kwame, so much, Brother Kabbalah, and Brother Pigbin in his absence. I want to thank him so much. So everyone in the audience, thank you so much. Please do share this video. We've got to get our people motivated around Pan-Africanism. We've got to get our people charged up, just like we've been able to do with one of our viewers on Zoom, charged up so that they feel that they want to put their hands to the wheel and do the works. Thank you so much. More questions coming in, but we don't have the time. Brother Errol, thank you so much. He says, we will be great again. We can unite as one continent, and then we will be great. I think that's a wonderful note to end on, Brother Errol. Thank you so much. We will indeed be great again, and we will indeed have to unite as a continent and move forward as one, because in so doing, we will have power, we will have strength, we will have might. Thank you so much. To all that's been watching, all of you have been tuned in via YouTube, thank you so much. Please share. Subscribe if you're not a subscriber. Thank you, Brother Kabbalah. Thank you, Brother Kwame, and thank you to Brother Pigbin, and to all the viewers in the audience. More strength, more love, more Vudun power to each and every one of us.